This podcast is created on Treaty 8 territory, the ancestral and present-day home to the many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We honor the original caretakers of this land, the history, and the opportunity to walk together in friendship, truth, and reconciliation. This episode mentions residential schools, sexual abuse, and intergenerational trauma. Viewer discretion is advised. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada published the 94 Calls to Action, urging all levels of government to work together to change policies and programs to repair the harms caused by residential schools. It's a detailed account of the atrocities faced by Indigenous children who were physically and sexually abused in government boarding schools, where an estimated 3,200 children died from tuberculosis, malnutrition, and other diseases resulting from poor living conditions. Truth and reconciliation is not a process that's only up to the government. It's up to each one of us. We need to take responsibility and learn about the atrocities that have been committed and continue to be committed against our Indigenous communities.
Just wanna uplift you, spread love and positivity. Yeah, everybody tune in to Cara Jones Speaks. Wanna shed light on the extraordinary. Sharing people's stories from struggling to glory. It's all about empowerment, the coolest channel you're gonna find. Trying to make the world better, one step at a time. Let's go. Cara Jones Speaks. Yeah, Cara Jones Speaks.
My guest today, Jaylenn Tourageau, is an inspirational and influential teacher in my life. They hold space for many to learn and unlearn stories of the past to create a stronger foundation for future generations. Jaylenn is deeply committed to decolonization and over the last decade has been committed to deconstructing the narrative of how Indigenous people are portrayed throughout history. Some of those responsibilities include learning and understanding, reciprocity, self-determination, and the impact that intergenerational trauma has had on Indigenous communities and their relationship to the land. Jaylenn brings some of their journey forward as part of the Land Breathes, a Treaty 8 exhibition curated by Jaime Morse at the Grande Prairie Art Gallery. Hi, Jaylenn. I'm so pumped to have you here on the show because, let's get real, this took a long time, and I can get into that at the beginning of the narration. But I was determined because you're an incredible artist, you're one of my best friends, and you just recently did an exhibition at the Grande Prairie Art Gallery. I would love to hear how you got involved and what inspired you to be a part of Land Breaths.
Hello, Cara. Hi. So, the call-out came for this exhibition in September last year. It was an email that I received, and it had actually been sent by the former ED. We had a meeting with it was a call out for all artists who lived in Treaty 8, who were part of Treaty 8, and if they were interested to do a Zoom meeting. And that's where everything began. We all got together, those who were interested in that, and then it took a while for it. So when I started with it, I was hesitant.
Why?
I wasn't sure exactly what the intent was behind this exhibition. Is it, and whose side of the story they were willing to tell it from. So with that, I asked the pertinent question: what is your intention? Are you willing to allow us as Indigenous artists to tell our story? And all the answers that I got were yes. I also, in another way, educated them on some of the history of Treaty 8, because the other part is with Treaty 8, it doesn't just encompass northern Alberta. It encompasses northern BC, northern Saskatchewan, and the southern part of the Northwest Territories. So I needed to know with this exhibit if are they talking about all of Treaty 8, as I just mentioned, or was this simply Treaty 8? Because and those were questions I needed to hear and such. So once that started, it wasn't until December when, after things changed there, that we really started having conversations. So I had emailed Jessica at the art gallery, willing to more offer my service as a consultant to the project rather than put something in at the time, because I was still not sure yet. So it was needing to have those conversations before I said yes.
What I loved, and I didn't realize when I went in there and saw your piece, was that those were students working on your piece, and you guys were painting right on the wall.
Yes.
So tell me about the piece and how you ended up working with the students.
So the piece is titled "As Long as This Land Shall Last." It is a realistic view of what Treaty 8 in relationship to the land that it is in this invisible border encompasses and the people who actually live there. So when I decided to do this, I wanted to bring the truth. I wanted to bring storytelling. I wanted to bring what I knew and my knowledge to this piece in a way that made people think and started asking the questions that need to be asked. They need to ask when it comes to land acknowledgements, when it comes to understanding the history.
What are some of those things?
Some of the things would be a relationship, the people, traditions, the impact that colonialism has had on not just us as Indigenous people, but the land itself, and that disruption of a relationship and agreement that we had made, our ancestors made prior to the signing, and the fact that our inherent responsibility through this agreement is to take care of the land and ensure that balance is always there.
The students must have been pretty excited to work with you, and it was really cool to see you in that director role.
They were actually, with the students, that had been Jessica's idea, because this was a very large piece. It's 4 panels directly on the wall, and we had to pull it off in 2 weeks. So when Jessica had approached me about this, I'm like, okay, sure. And then so she met with the fine arts department, did all the background stuff, and then presented to me the names, the resumes, and everything. And so it was sort of like, so part of it was what I wanted to meet them before we started and allow them to see what I was about to create and get a feel if they were really willing to do this alongside me, and they were. So all 4 students, we figured out, Jessica figured out their schedules. We figured out how to work I was in their own school schedules, because they were still students. They're doing their finals at the same time.
Bless them.
And taking classes. So the collaboration was a challenge, for one, because I'd never done this, working with others on a project before, but it was also me wanting to help guide their own aspirations. So a lot of the work was teaching them how to ask the questions. It was giving them a sense of value.
Well, it would have been an honor to work with you, because I know it probably doesn't feel like it, but the fun thing is that I met Jaylenn in that very spot in 2015, I think it was, or 14, and your career has completely just blown up. And for those students, they were where you once were.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably totally honored they got to work with you and be directed by you.
I think they were. It was an interesting, as I said, interesting collaboration, but also just letting them find their own niche into putting in how they added to the piece.
Fair. But the fact that you even thought of that just really shows the depth of your art, that and what you're trying to teach about the collective, way that we are connected to the land and these experiences.
And
tell me, what was some of the feedback the students had for you? Did they comment much on what that was like for them?
They enjoyed it. So they actually really, I think, took away a lot more than they thought they would take away. It was nice watching them kind of blossom and ask, okay, so how do we do this? So how did you create this part of the, like with the water? How did you create that effect to look like that? So I walked them through the process of how I did it, and they would simply follow, and then also just, is this the right color, or how do we do this? But it was also getting them to use all the skills that they had already learned within the art studio, put it into practice, a real, actual, experiential practice when you enter into works of doing one for the gallery, and what that looks like outside of student space.
Yeah, that's why I loved watching you.
So it's that immersive part of what I understand and what I know to be a very large part of how we learn.
Yeah. Now, as a Two-Spirit knowledge keeper, you really bring a unique perspective to a space like that in a collective with other Indigenous artists. What are some things that you learned in that space?
A lot, actually. It was actually nice to really work with not just Jessica, but Mohsin, all the staff there, Rob, and the other curators who were basically, in a lot of sense, jumped on board of what I wanted, and they just really helped bring it to life and helped to troubleshoot of how we are going to create this piece. So, and I learned a lot. So it was nice working with an organization, and even as an art gallery, with those who have that commitment, a level of commitment that is not easily seen in other places. And it was very that clear that they're wanting to walk that relationship journey as a space, as a colonial structural space to give Indigenous artists like myself or any others that safe feeling of being safe, being able to create our vision that's honored, respected, accepted, and and really wanted to see it come alive.
Now, as artists, the art world is often really gatekept. Like, there's a lot of gatekeeping. It's challenging to get in to have shows or to get your artwork seen. But then the definition of art, thank God, has expanded, because back when I went to school, craft and art were different things, right? And they would debate it all the time. And now that I see more spaces, including, thank God, Indigenous artists, because the talent is just, we have not been experiencing everything that we could have been through these artists' work. It's interesting to think about, like, I'd love to hear from you. What would you like to see change when it comes to representation and getting rid of some of those gatekeepers?
What I'd really like to see is creating a space where as Indigenous artists, as an Indigenous researcher, that our art is our research. It is the basis of who we are as storytellers. To have a space, have that space to tell the story, and to say this is, and within a Indigenous perspective and worldview that is not colored by colonial understanding, and unveils all the falsehoods and untruths that westernized society and even in schools, education, that brings a more positive light to who we are and starts undoing the narrative that many have assumed was truth.